We are live. Boxing Gossip podcast number 48. And already I can see there's over 20 people in the chat watching and waiting for us to go live. So many thanks to everyone who's already joined in. Joined on the panel tonight. I've already got Irish Tom with me. I've got Paul with me. I've got reason to believe that Jet in fairly short order. So, should have a good panel tonight and lots of boxing to discuss. I'm going to start by talking about the action in the United States. The Lomachenko card. Before moving over to discuss some of the action in the UK, and then finally looking ahead to some of next week's fights as well as the major news in the sports. But let's start by bringing in Irish Tom. Irish, what was your take on the Lomachenko fight against Sosa, and how impressed were you by Lomachenko's performance in that matchup, mate?
Well, I was saying last week on the show that I didn't expect Sosa to win. Really expecting to win a minute of any round, to be honest. But saying that, I was very impressed with Lomachenko. I think that was the first time when I've seen Lomachenko where I've been taken with him. I think, and now Sosa is not a grade A talent or whatever, but he's damn game, and he'll give it to you for 12 hard rounds. And Lomachenko, he took his soul. He really did. The thing is, Lomachenko, his foot movement is just brilliant. He's made a convert of me. I kind of see more now what people like in him. To me, he might be the best inside fighter in the sport, which is weird. I don't think people think about him being inside, but he practically is an inside fighter because he's on guys and he's punching them within. He's dancing right in front of them, and he's constantly changing and shifting his feet and making it very hard for the guys to predict what's happening. So, yeah, I thought it was an excellent performance. The only thing I find with Lomachenko is, and I don't know if it's something that he'll develop, but the thing that he still needs the victories on his resume. He still doesn't have those marquee name victories, I don't think. But also he doesn't have that power. Like when we think about, say, Manny Pacquiao, a similar who looked like he had the ability to go through the weight classes. Manny could knock people out. He could really knock them down. Like with Loma, we haven't really seen that. Most of the time, he breaks a guy down and they kind of either quit. Sometimes he knocks him out. He knocked out Rocky Martinez and he knocked out on his debut. But it seems to me like Pacquiao was able to knock out killers. And I don't know if Lomachenko has that in his arsenal. But, his footwork is really very, very, very good. And I think he's the best inside fighter in the game. So all in all, I think it was a really, really good performance. I'm a fan.
Do you know what? I'm gonna take a moment just to echo the sentiments of Irish Tom there. I think I've been skeptical of Lomachenko really since that Salido defeat, and I actually didn't post a video on this fight largely because I was away for the weekend and only caught up with it in the last day or so, but I was really, really taken by his performance against Sosa. And I appreciate that Sosa is not an elite level talent, but, the way Lomachenko took care of business in there, I was massively, massively, massively impressed by. And I actually think he has improved exponentially as a professional boxer and has come on for the experience that he's had in the professional ranks so far. And he's going to be a very, very tough guy to beat at this stage. Irish, clearly Lomachenko appears to be the number one at 130 pounds. He's talking up fights at 135 pounds. He's even talking up fights at 140 pounds. At 135 pounds, he's been linked with the likes of Terry Flanagan. He's been linked with the likes of Mikey Garcia. Specifically, it appears he's actually called out Mikey Garcia. What's your take on Lomachenko moving up in weights? Do you think that his style will be as effective against the bigger guys?
Well, like that remains to be seen. You know, some guys have that ability to put on muscle, and for it not to be a hindrance. Like Pacquiao, I was looking after that fight. I was thinking, God, you know, he does have a kind of a, you know, he does have that weird. His style is kind of herky jerky a bit as well. Like, and it is reminiscent of Pacquiao. I think he's been influenced by Pacquiao's attacking style, but Pacquiao tends to be more like hop in, hop out. You know, really rapid foot movement from out to in to out. While he uses the foot movement to in, but he also moves it around the inside when he's there. But Manny was able to put on the muscle, and he's the same height. I think Manny's a half an inch taller. So Manny was able to do it, but that doesn't mean he'll be able to do it. I think if he's got to do it, he'll have to put on the muscle on his legs a lot, which, you know, would suit his style. I think he should stay in the 130 division and clean it out. Remember, he's only like I don't know, 2 or 3 fights there. I'd like to see him, you know, try and unify a few titles. There's no rushing him moving up. Those fights that are 135, I think they'll still be there in, you know, 2 fights, 3 fights time. I'd prefer to see him stay where he is. What else?
130 though, Tom, because the Gervonta Davis fight doesn't appear to be happening at all. So putting that one to a side, are there really any named fights for him at that division?
Well, I'd like to see him fight Toledo again, you know, if I'm honest. So, you know, and I think that would go a long way to clearing up, say, the doubters. Like, I consider myself to be a convert now, but let me just check. I'm just going to check what the featherweight division is like at the top end. You know, there's Burchelt. You know, that's a good fight, Miguel Burchelt. Like, the one thing I'd say is with a guy like you know, even Pedraza or somebody. You know, the thing is with like, if we see how he's being matched, he's pretty much being matched with guys that are his own height a lot. He hasn't been matched with guys with tall guys with reach. And to be honest with you, they're the guys I think that will be able to do him some damage. So, or guys with really good timing. So I think, like, can you imagine putting him in against a guy like Robert Easter Jr., who's nearly 6 foot? And if Robert Easter Jr. was just able to jab, it would be stylistically very difficult for him. He'd be giving up 6.5 inches in weight or in height. So, like, I think that kind of style is hard. And also Mikey, because Mikey times his punches. A lot of these guys get bamboozled, but Mikey can time and he's got power and, you know, good speed, I think. So, I just think there's a lot of good fights from him. There's no rushing him moving up. I just don't think there's a huge rush in him moving up. I'd like to see him beat up a few guys, you know. Like, he's still at featherweight. Who was he beating at featherweight? He's beaten your man Nicholas Walters. And that's and the only person Nicholas Walters really beat, if you think about it, was Nito Donaire. And that Nito Donaire is like started his career at flyweight. So, you know, he wasn't a truly fully fledged featherweight, I don't think. So, like, I think that, you know, he doesn't really have any names. Like, I think he does look spectacular at the weekend, but, you know, again, he still needs those breakout fights. Just still needs them.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think for me, he's edging onto my top 10 pound for pound list because I think he's beating so many. They're not elite names, but they're very good names. And he's doing that. He's done that on several occasions, but he's missing a huge name. I'd like to see him fight Salido, like you. I'd like to see him right that wrong. Tom, I've got to ask. I know you're saying you'd like him to stay at 130, and I agree that he actually stood stay at 130 for a little while. But if he were to fight Garcia at 135 pounds tomorrow, who would you be picking in that fight, mate?
I think I pick Mikey because I think Mikey will be able to time him, and I think Mikey has got pretty devastating power at 135, and I think Mikey would be able to. Well, we don't know. I just think Mikey is like such an elite boxer. You know, is not an extravagant style he has, but his timing and his judgment of distance against a guy like Mikey would be able to, I think Mikey would be able to, after a number of rounds, come to terms with his style. And I think then he'll be able to hurt him. So that's, but I think that it is a great fight. But I would not be surprised if Lomachenko, bamboozled him. And so, but I think Mikey would, but I think it's one of those very close to 50-50. For me, it's a Kovalev Ward type one, but I'd go for Mikey.
Go for Mikey. Okay, that's interesting. Tom, we'll come back to you on the Flanagan Liam Smith card. Want to discuss that almost as like we'll go around the panel and then start that topic. Just before we go on to Paul, the undercard for Lomachenko featured Alexander Usyk and a guy whose name I'm afraid I'm about to butcher, but is it something like Gvozdyk or something of that nature, Tom?
Gvozdyk.
Alexander Gvozdyk, yeah.
Gvozdyk. Okay. Tom, did you watch the Usyk fight and the Gvozdyk fight, and what did you make on their performances as well, mate?
I have watched most of the Usyk fight. I thought Usyk, this Michael Hunter guy, there's something about Michael Hunter. To me, Michael Hunter is looks like he can do something in the future. He's a good fighter. It kind of baffles me about how mismanaged some fighters' careers are. Michael Hunter's career just seems to be thrown in the deep end with, very little on his resume. And, he was able to outbox Usyk at stages. I think that Usyk is nowhere near the talent of Lomachenko. I think he's pretty good. But I think him and Bradis is a reasonably close fight. I'm going to have to, I won't say too much about that fight because I haven't seen it all yet, but I said last week, I'm not really a fan of Usyk's style. I think I don't think it's that attractive. And I don't think he can punch like the big cruiserweights. He's a volume guy. Maybe there's something in that between him and Lomachenko, both being trained by Papachenko or whatever. Maybe there's something in it where they don't really concentrate on their power. But I think the two of them probably need to. Gvozdyk, yeah, interesting fighter. Yeah, he really beat up that guy who was against, what's his name again?
Ineski Gonzalez.
Ineski Gonzalez, who I hadn't seen before, but I know he's fought Jean-Paul Pascal. But Gvozdyk looked quite good, but he's obviously got power, but he runs around the ring a lot. He really, I'm trying to think who he reminds me of. Like he hits and then he runs and he's putting expending a lot of energy on the outside, and he strikes me. And I've heard that he got knocked down in one of his previous fights, quite hard. I think Tommy Carpensi, which I didn't see.
That's right.
But,
yeah.
Maybe I did actually see that fight when I think about it. But he strikes me as somebody who's nervous of getting hit. So I think he'll do well. But I think if he gets up with one of the top guys, the real big bangers in that division, and there's a lot of them, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes to sleep.
Interesting. Yeah, I was impressed by Gvozdyk, although I don't know how highly I rate Ineski Gonzalez. Having said that, I did watch the Gonzalez-Pascal fight, and he ran Pascal very close on that. That Usyk fight, I appreciate that was a close fight in the first half, but that fight really should have been stopped. I thought that was really terrible refereeing in the 12th round. I know Hunter had fought valiantly. I know he'd shown a huge amount of heart, but I think it's the referee's job to really, defend the fighters in the ring and look after their safety. And I know it was nice for Hunter to see the final bell, but some of the way he was getting clipped in that last round and some of the punches that were snapping his head back. I was watching the fight today. I've only just caught up with it, and I was kind of watching it through my fingers. I really thought it was pretty unpleasant viewing there. So that would be the comment I'd make on that. As for Usyk,
yeah, well, I didn't get to I only got to like the 9th or 10th round, so I didn't get to see that. But yeah, I've heard others saying a similar thing.
Oh mate, it was bad. It was bad, yeah. But a more competitive fight than that round, would suggest. But there you go. I'm still not picking anyone to beat Usyk at cruiserweight. I still think he's the number one out there. I'd pick him to beat Bradis, but yeah, maybe he is a bit more vulnerable than he looked against Glowacki after that Hunter fight. Let's put it that way. Paul, let's bring you in, mate. I guess out of the three of us, me, Tom, and yourself, you were the one who was the highest on Lomachenko in previous discussions. So let's get your thoughts on his performance against Sosa, and just how impressed were you, or was that exactly what you were expecting?
I mean, I was expecting a shutout, which is what it was. But I've got to say, I'm encouraged to hear you guys kind of like concede that like you might have been a bit wrong about him, because I've been seeing a lot
concede.
Well, say you're how did you put it, Tom? I'll let you speak for yourself.
I've said too much.
Well, I think you said you are a convert. He's made a convert of you, which I'm kind of like it. I tell you what, like the performance was. I just think he's improving. He's getting even better. I thought that was as close to a punch perfect performance as you're going to get. I do agree that maybe he hasn't got that sort of show-stopping one-punch knockout power. I mean, he knocked out Rocky Martinez, and he's stopping these guys. And I kind of think he would have probably stopped Sosa if the corner hadn't have pulled him out of there. He was taking some awful punishment, like especially towards the end. But I just think his performance overall was just so good. I was super impressed, man. I mean, everything is there. The footwork is just obvious. You don't even need to talk about the footwork. The footwork is just like on another level. But his defense as well. He's kind of like he's one of these. It's like I see fighters do certain things that Lomachenko does, but he does it all. Like his defense was really, really good, but he's also a guy that, I mean, he threw so many punches. I don't know what the punch stats were, but I mean, like, he was just landing at will on, and I liked the. I know some people don't like it, but I liked the little bit of showboat in there where he's doing the matador and then when Sosa tried to sort of like put his hand up and swing for him, he was doing that sort of like mocking him the way he was swinging and everything. I kind of like that. I mean, it's entertainment. Boxing is entertainment, and that's entertaining to me. Watching Lomachenko sort of like, and I agree, he is an inside fighter. He's kind of an inside and sort of like three quarters. He's not an outside fighter, is he? I think he can kind of like mix it up a bit, but watching him sort of like get in close and step around people and then swinging into air, I mean, I could watch that all day long, to be completely honest. I'm a huge fan of this kid. I think he's amazing, to be completely honest.
Could you compare him in terms of like the reflexes and the way he goes in and out? Could you compare him to Roy Jones Jr., Paul?
Not really. I think he is probably closer to Pacquiao, but it's true what Tom says. Pacquiao would be more sort of like bouncing balls of his feet in, bang bang, and back out again.
Yeah.
Whereas what Lomachenko does, and one of the commentators said something. I didn't agree with a lot of the commentary. I thought some of it was a bit ridiculous. But one of the things that they said was he looks like he's on ice, which I kind of can understand what they mean. He looks like he's gliding around the opponent rather than on the balls of his feet in and out like Pacquiao would. I don't know if I can compare him to anybody. They were talking about Willie Pep, comparing him to Willie Pep. I think there is some comparisons there, but I think Willie Pep was more like a Mayweather type. Willie Pep was a guy that would just kind of like shoulder roll, lean back. That's not really what Lomachenko is about. He is more about avoiding the shots, but avoiding them and stay close, you know, rather than avoiding them by diving halfway across the ring. He'll avoid them and stay close and emerge on the other side of the guy and pepper him with about 3 or 4 shots. I thought his combination punching was amazing. I thought his body work was amazing. Man, I tell you what, I know he hasn't got the resume yet, but when I look on an eye test, I don't think there's anybody any better than him in boxing today. I think he's the best fighter in the world today.
Yeah. He passes the. I know what you were saying earlier about Irish Tom conceding or not conceding. I've got to admit that I myself, possibly not as strong as Irish Tom, but would, you know, chuck myself into that boat. He certainly made a foul in me. I'm certainly higher on Lomachenko following on that Sosa fight than I've ever been in the past. Let's put it that way, Paul. You know, the eye test was supreme. And, you know, Sosa, I'm not saying Sosa's his best win. I'm not saying Sosa's an elite name. But Sosa's a very, very credible win. It was equivalent at least to, you know, Golovkin beating Martin Murray or David Lemieux. You know, that kind of standard of win in my book, if you like.
Yeah, I agree. One thing I do want to say is, and I'm not going to mention any names, but there's been some podcasts and boxing channels since this fight, guys that were saying Sosa was a really good test for Lomachenko. And in fact, on one of them, there was one guy out of, I think, about 4 or 5 that actually picked Sosa for the win. And after the fight, they're all saying he was a bum. They're saying he was no good and this, that, and the other. And his one guy was saying his approach was all wrong and whatnot. And it's just like, come on, man. You know, I just, you know, I'm really encouraged to see that, you know, people, that you guys are giving him the credit he deserves, because I was kind of concerned that I might come on here and everybody just start calling Sosa a bum after that. But yeah, I mean, people need to sort of like be a bit more sort of like consistent with what they're saying. If you are saying that this is a stiff test, then give a guy credit when he passes it, you know. So
Yeah. I must admit, I'm slightly disappointed. I was kind of hoping Irish Tom was going to come on, completely destroy Lomachenko's performance and call him an absolute bum. So I'm slightly disappointed he didn't do that. But yeah, no, I've got to agree, Paul. From what Sosa actually impressed me against Stephen Smith. I appreciate Stephen Smith. You know, he's not an elite fighter, but Sosa showed he was a clear level above in that particular fight. And I've seen Sosa in other good fights as well. You know, I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, but Sosa.
Javier Fortuna, it might have been.
That's the one. Yeah.
He got up off the canvas and stopped Fortuna, didn't he? I mean, he's no world beater. He's no elite. He's not a pound for pound guy, but he was a decent fighter. He was a decent test. And to be fair, Lomachenko did make him look very ordinary.
He's a top 10 fighter.
Yeah, definitely. But Usyk, I was a little bit disappointed with Usyk, to be completely honest. And as you guys know, I'm kind of like was kind of a bit of an advocate of Usyk. I don't know. I expected him. I know Hunter did look pretty good, but he was very awkward, wasn't he? He was kind of like very unorthodox, and I kind of. I don't know. I kind of like had Usyk. I kind of really did think of Usyk as quite a clever boxer. Now, anybody can have an off day, I guess, but I just kind of expected him to figure him out a bit quicker, because even though he did kind of pick up the pace after a couple of rounds or whatever, and he was kind of on top, he was still getting caught a lot. And I guess I don't know. I guess I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting him to deal with Hunter a little bit more easy. I hadn't seen Hunter a lot. I will say that though. So yeah, I mean, Gvozdyk. I thought Gvozdyk looked quite good. I can see what Tom's saying is like he's one of those fighters, isn't he? Like he's a real outside sort of like skipping around the ring type guy. I thought he looked quite good. I thought he looked quite good. I know Usyk Gonzalez. I mean, I think he might have been out for a while as well. And somebody can correct me if I'm wrong with that. I think he may have been out for like about a year or something. So I think it's a semi respectable win. But I thought it was a kind of a good card. I do agree on the refereeing though. I thought Usyk, Hunter should have been pulled out of that fight probably after about 2 minutes of that third round. He was getting an awful beating.
Yeah, pretty brutal stuff, hey. But I guess they wanted to let him last the distance, but I think that was the wrong decision, really.
Yeah.
Could have ended very, very badly. But no, Paul, fair play to you with Lomachenko, and yeah, appreciate the comments, mate. Let's go over to Jet. Jet, how's things? And what's the Lomachenko card, mate?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Yeah. I watched the card and it was decent. It was, I mean, I was more hyped for Smith Williams than the other fights, but the other fights were pretty good. Should I just go through the Lomachenko card, or are we talking about Smith Williams or?
Just the Lomachenko Usyk Gvozdyk one to begin with, mate.
Okay, cool. Lomachenko done what I expected him to do, but he done it in very very convincing fashion. Souza is a top 10 fighter, as you guys have said earlier, and he's given a few fighters a really good run for their money, beating a few. He's taken a loss obviously to Nicholas Walters, who's a massive guy at feather or super feather.
He drew with Walters, Jet. That was a draw with Walters.
Oh, sorry, yeah, draw. But I thought Walters won that fight. Sorry, anyway. But yeah, he's Fortuna, Steven Smith. They're not. He's been in some good names, and he's always gave a good account of himself. So Lomachenko, he's on the way to superstardom. And I've seen a lot of tweets suggesting that he's now the new number one pound for pound. So where people rate him in the pound for pound list, that's for. But he's elite. He's an elite fighter, and he looks the real goods. Usyk, I'm with Paul on that. I do think he was slightly underwhelming. You would think someone of his pedigree and stature would, really go through the gears and, stop someone like Michael Hunter. Hunter did, he didn't disgrace himself, let's put it that way, but he was taking an awful beating at times in the fight, and you have to wonder whether that does him, any world of good. It might do him actually worse than anything decent going on in his career. That takes his toll on the body. Obviously he's young, but hopefully just next time his corner save him for another day, I guess. And he said he liked the rematch. Whether or not that's viable, I don't think so, but I think he just needs to develop. He finds someone's hurt, he needs to kind of go and stop them. I know he doesn't have great power or one punch knockout power, but that would be another string to his bow if you could add that. Gvozdyk, he probably impressed me the most of all of them. We all know how good Lomachenko is at a certain level, but Gvozdyk, he really impressed me. Usyk and Gonzalez is a very very good name on his resume. He's a very good fighter. Gvozdyk has actually fought in a lot of top ranked sort of 15, top 20 fighters in his last few fights. Karpensi, Isaac Chilemba, and he's done a real number on some of them. So you know, he looks really, really good. I know he's actually you know, quite high in the WBC rankings, and I think WBC are going to order a eliminator or a purse bid for a final eliminator against Joe Smith Jr. So, you know, I think that's a very winnable fight for Gvozdyk, and obviously Fonfara versus Stevenson too is happening. So the winner of that could face the winner of Fonfara Stevenson.
On Lomachenko, Jet, a lot of talk about him stepping up and fighting at higher weight classes. Do you think that he has the style? Do you think that he's got the power, the size to have success at those higher weight classes, such as 135 and 140?
Yeah, I mean, he's not a big 130 fighter for me. I don't think he's the biggest, you know, super feather out there. Uchiyama, Miura, Miguel Belcher, those guys are big units at the weight. But I don't know. It's tough to say because obviously the guys at lightweight are pretty good, you know. And when I say pretty good, they're actually world class. Jorge Linares, Mikey Garcia. Obviously, there's been talk of a Terry Flanagan fight as well, which I'm sure we're going to discuss his fight later on in the show. So it's tough, but you have to look maybe at the Nicholas Walters fight. You know, the Nicholas Walters fight. He done a real number on him, and he's a big super featherweight. So, I mean, if he's doing, you know, well against those big sort of type of opponents, you know, it doesn't bode too badly. But I do think he'll be very, very small at 135. Whether or not he'll have the success, you know, that he did against Walters, against a big guy, someone like a Mikey Garcia who can bang at 140 as well as 135, that's another question. You know, he's got the skill set, but maybe the size just might catch up with him. It's just similar to Carl Frampton. Carl Frampton, if he moves up to 130, which he's been talking about, you know, the size eventually is going to catch up with him. So I do think he could do pretty decent at 135. Whether or not he could beat the top names, I'm not sure. Size difference, how big will that be? I do think is a stretch too far. I know there'd been Bob Arum's been Crawford fight, Manny Pacquiao fight, but I think 140 is unrealistic, and you know it's not viable at this stage. He has the possibility of winning a world title and, you know, facing big names.
Yeah, I echo those sentiments. Really, I wonder if, you know, at the minute, Lomachenko isn't a massive one-punch knockout artist, but he's clearly got power to keep people honest. I think at 140 or even 135, I'm not sure the power will remain at that sort of level, that it's a relevant factor in the fight. Also, kind of think that, you know, he's a small guy. He's got very fast hands, very fast feet. You know, he throws a lot of punches. He's very active in the ring. I'm not sure an extra 5 or 10 pounds will be good for him. You know, that extra weight may affect his movement, his mobility, his speed. And yeah, I think we have weight classes for a reason. And I think he's already small for 130, let alone 135. But no, Jet, agreeing with you there, mate. Thanks very much for your thoughts on that. And we'll come back to you in just a minute on the BT Sports Bell.
Can I just say something quickly on that?
Yeah.
Before we move on from the Lomachenko, I kind of like, and with Irish on this, I think I'd like to see the Salido rematch. I don't think there's any rush for him to move up. I think like maybe the Salido rematch, maybe Burchout, maybe try and unify. You know, Burchout is as I think somebody says, is quite a big unit at the weight as well. I think Jet said it, and he's a big puncher as well, Burchout. But I think, you know, like guys like Mikey Garcia's 5'6". If you believe BoxRec, Mikey Garcia is the same height as Lomachenko. Now, I kind of like viewed Mikey as a bit bigger than that. I don't know. They've got Nicholas Walters down as 5'7". I think he could probably hang with the guys at 135. I don't know if I'd pick him to beat Mikey Garcia, because Mikey Garcia is obviously the best in that division. But I just think he hasn't been at 130 long. I think, you know, he only moved up. Was it Rocky Martinez? Was that the first fight at 130, or was that at one?
Yeah, that was his first fight at 130.
Yeah, so that's like he's had like 3 fights at 130. I think, you know, at least another one or two before moving up, I think would be a better idea. I mean, Terry Flanagan's having trouble making 135, isn't he? I mean, Terry Flanagan, it's been highly publicised this week that he's apparently struggling to get down to 135. So, yeah, I mean, I know that fight's being spoken about, but yeah, I just wanted to kind of like just say that, like, I think the Salido rematch and maybe Burchout is where we should go next, and no rush for the Garcia fight. I think it can be hyped a bit more as well and be an even bigger fight, maybe in 6 months, a year time.
Definitely. Yeah, I completely agree. I think at some point, the Salido rematch is certainly one that I'd like to see, echoing the sentiments of yourself and Irish Tom. I do think at some point, the Gervonta Davis fight is a massive fight. You know, for me, that's the most attractive fight in the division. But, you know, they've made comments immediately to distance themselves from that fight and say that it's, you know, not on their radar right now. And, you know, whilst there are other names at 130, I don't think they're the glamour names. I don't think they're the names that are really going to turn him into a star. So it may be that he's tempted up to the higher weight classes for, you know, the financial reasons and for the glory reasons. And, you know, if he is, there's certainly some superstar matches to be made there, I guess. But it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out, definitely.
Floyd's not going to let him anywhere near Tank. Floyd's not going to let him anywhere near him, and their comments have shown that. What I do find a bit curious is that some of these podcasts as well, who are kind of like in other situations, are saying, well, if you're a world champion, you should just fight anybody. Are saying, well, you know, Tank's not going to be ready for at least a year, and he needs to be given time and whatnot. And it's just kind of like, well, which is it? If you're a world champion, should you fight everybody, or? I mean, you know, I just think there's so much hypocrisy in the way people kind of like judge fighters. It's kind of like, if it's your guy, they can get away with just about anything, and if not. You know what I mean? Paul,
are you trying to start a podcast war?
That's it. I was I not being too discreet about it? I thought I was being discreet.
Don't worry, Paul. We'll fuck him up.
I actually don't know who you're referring to, believe it or not, but I'm sure I'll ask you again off air, perhaps. But yeah, there we go. But no, we're all impressed by Lomachenko, and yeah, credit to him for that win. And yeah, very, very interesting to see where he goes next. Let's talk about the BT Sportsbox Nation card, headlined by Flanagan versus Petrov, with Liam Smith, Liam Williams on the undercard, Jack Catterall versus Martin Geffen, and the debut of Daniel Dubois. Let me start by saying the reason that I was really, really against Flanagan versus Petrov is because of exactly what happened. Flanagan won an ugly fight that won't have won him too many new fans, that made him look very, very questionable. You know, Petrov is very solid, very awkward, but very unspectacular. And for me, the fight didn't really add up in terms of risk-reward ratio. There was very little to be gained and quite a lot to be lost. And even though Flanagan won, you know, Flanagan won in an unspectacular fashion and in a fight that really, really, really showed gaps in his game for me. Iris, was this a poor performance from Terry Flanagan? Was it a subpar performance, or was it a case that this was the best opponent Flanagan had been in with by quite some way, and that step up in class exposed some holes in his game?
I think a bit of both. Yeah, it was a poor performance. You know, I thought I was watching it, but to be honest with you, a lot of the rounds were close, and I found it quite a boring fight. I found it a frustrating fight. Like, Flanagan would do the right thing for a while, and then He would just allow himself to get backed up, and the guy was unleashing to him to the body up close and stuff. Look, I thought that was a reasonably close fight. For a while, I thought Flanagan was going to lose that. I had it like, I wasn't scoring that fight, but I thought anywhere between 8-4 and a draw is about right. 7-5 is probably what I would. I didn't score it, but I would think about 7-5 is right. The scorecards were, a total disgrace. I don't know what two of them were. Two of them were 9-3, and then one of them was 12-0.
Yeah.
It's like, we've given Eddie Hearn so much stick for his bad scorecards. And this is the first one Frank's had in a while, like, that I can remember. But that was as bad as any that we've seen in on the Matchroom side. And I hope that
defended them. Steve Bunce was saying 12-0, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, like I suppose if we're talking about this, we might as well just hit onto the whole card. Like I was, I was looking forward to this card, to be honest with you, and I thought it was a shit card. I don't know what anybody else thought. I didn't enjoy it. I thought that I know we're going to talk about the Smith and the Thing fight later on. That ended flat. I don't know whether it was just the microphones head up that they had in there, but it was dead. The atmosphere from the telly was completely dead. I don't know whether they had the microphones not in the right place. Was the crowd giving loads of free tickets? But watching it as a fan, it was a shit atmosphere. Compare that to the atmosphere that Crawler had. There's just no comparison. Look, you don't need to sell out the MEN to have a good atmosphere. A lot of the earlier fights when Crawler was there was only 7,000 or 8,000. They had the lower bowl. That's all they had. So you don't need them to be like 20,000 to have a good atmosphere. I thought that atmosphere was shit. I don't know. People are talking up your man Paul Dempsey as being good. I heard you gossip saying that it was good. They had a new look and feel. They got new people on. Paul Dempsey. Huh?
I quite like Dempsey.
Paul Dempsey was like fired from Sky like 20 years ago. It's like bringing back your dead granny and bringing her to a wedding. There's so you have Paul Dempsey, and Paul Dempsey, he does ask the hard question, but he also doesn't allow anybody to fucking finish a sentence. He just butts into everybody the whole time. And then they had a shortage of fucking of microphones, I don't know, what Sky do. Does Sky have those little ones that are bubbles on their face so they can stand there and talk? And at one point there, after Terry Flanagan was fighting, and they were handing microphones around and everything. Man, it was all over the fucking place. And who else did they get? You man, what do you call the co-commentator?
Ronald McIntosh, Richie Woodall.
Richie Woodall. They had fucking Richie Woodall. And Richie Woodall, he had 3 10-10 fucking rounds in that Liam Smith fight. 3 10-10 rounds in 9 rounds. And I just think, there's a whole load of people that work in boxing, maybe not known, or fighters that aren't that big. Most people actually don't know who Barry Jones is. Barry does the commentating, And there's probably lots of people that could commentate well, but I just think they picked and choose, and I don't think a lot of thought has gone into the production. And they really need to up their game, because I thought it was fucking dreadful. I thought it was worse than Box Nation. Bunsey couldn't fucking say a thing. Every time he tried and say something, Paul Dempsey'd interrupt him, and oh man, I thought it was fucking brutal.
That microphone thing was ridiculous. I saw a bit where Ronald McIntosh was trying to interview Frank Warren, and there was a whole 10-15 seconds where Frank Warren was clearly speaking and not a single word of what he was saying was getting picked up. And to be fair, Irish, you're also right about who they've chosen there. It's like they've thought, right, we need a new look. We need to get in some new people. Let me get the yellow pages of, second-tier boxing commentators. And you got Richie Woodall, you got Ronald McIntosh. I like Paul Dempsey personally, but these are all guys who we've seen pop up time and time again, do a bit of work on Channel 5, do a bit of work on ITV. They're the kind of... they're almost like the people who can't get a full-time boxing gig. So, Yeah, I hear you on that. And possibly some of the fights were slightly marred and disappointing as well. But what do you think of Flanagan's next moves, Tom? Where do you think he goes from here?
He says that he's only got like a couple of fights left at 135 before he moves up. I thought it was a poor, I thought he'd let that guy get on top of him when he didn't use his jab to keep him off. And when that guy got in and he was putting him under pressure, he was hitting him to the body. And I don't know what type of judges were scoring that 12-0, because I had that a very even fight just watching it casually. Where would he go from here? I think the thing is what I'm surprised at as well is that I thought the Terry Flanagan style suits to guys coming onto him. If you look at how I thought he did well against Stephen Orman and some of these guys, he likes when the pressure's coming onto him because you can counter punch and he can use his jab to try and keep them off. And I think that's his style. But look, he looked poor against that guy. And, think about it. Like, Marcus Maidana knocked that guy out, So Terry's not in that Marcus Maidana type league. And Marcus Maidana wasn't even, I don't think, a top lightweight at the time. So I think that division is quite top, one or two top names. But I think Terry is, unfortunately, and I like him, and I like him as a guy. I like his, I think he is quite skillful, but maybe he's just not able to maintain output at that weight class anymore. But I don't know where he goes. Like, I think Linares or Lomachenko or Mikey all clean him out. I think if he fought Lomachenko would win every round. I think if Mikey fought him, Mikey would knock him out. And I think Linares would school him, maybe a 9-3.
Yeah, and I don't know if his style would do so well at 140. We saw a guy like Petro having success bringing the presser. Surely the bigger guys with more power at 140 are really, really going to cause him a hell of a lot of problems. He's also...
Maybe, but he might be able to keep them off. He might be able to keep them off easier if he's got more in the tank.
Five though, mate. How's he going to have power up against much bigger guys?
But look at Ricky Burns is a similar-ish type puncher to him, and he was able to go up and compete at the higher weight classes. So he's been at 135 for a long time. So who knows? But I think Terry's done well. He's had a lot of easy defenses. That was his first proper defense. I'd like to see him get a big fight. It's kind of a shame that him and proper bullshit that him and Crawler never got that on, because that would have been a unification, and that would have sold out the MEN, and it would have been a great British domestic fight. Did you ever see Eddie Hearn turn down a British domestic fight in his life? Only when it's to do with Frank. So it's total bullshit. But I think that just disappointed overall. I thought at one stage, like, fucking Bunsey was going to throttle man Paul Dempsey. He was looking down at the ground. I'd say there's going to be some bitch fighting going on in the Box Nation headquarters. Bunsey's going to be getting Paul Dempsey in a headlock and fucking trying to flush him down the jacks.
Absolutely. Tom, before we'll move on to the other guys, but before we do, I've got to ask you about Liam Smith versus Liam Williams. Your take on that one, mate?
Oh, look, I'm just really annoyed at that. I was listening to the Boxing Coalition. I don't know if you boys listened to that, and they went through it. And I agree wholeheartedly what they were saying. I don't know how much of a bad headbutt it was. I don't know the angle I've seen it at. It wasn't the worst headbutt I've ever seen, but it was a clear headbutt, I think. And how does a referee miss a thing like that? It's very, very obvious. And the other thing is, I think Gary Lockett fucked over his fighter. He made a bollocks of it. I know he's been involved in some other occasions with where things have gone wrong for his fighters. Who I've criticized him for not pulling fighters out, but you don't quit a guy when you can ask the doctor to look at his cut. You know what I mean? And can you imagine Joe Gallagher like just allowing that to happen and not putting up a fight for his fighter? You know, we all dislike Joe Gallagher, but like no way he'd screw over his own fighter like that. And in the post-match interview, like you had your man Gary Lockett coming on saying, "Oh, well, he was tiring." It's like load of bullshit. I've watched just that 9th round again today, and you know that was an equal round until he got fucking concussed with a headbutt and his eye slit open. And it makes no difference if he already has a nick in his eye. What matters is the headbutt causing either that cut to get bigger or a secondary large cut. You know, that should have gone to the scorecards. Liam Williams should have and I should have won that bet. But it's not the bet that annoyed me. It's like, you know, it's like a trainer not standing up for his man and fucking him over. You know, Gary Lockett needs to get his head fucking twisted fucking 180 degrees. Maybe it's on back to front. You know, you should be there fighting for your guy in the corner.
Who did you have? How far did you have Liam Williams ahead at the time of the stoppage, Tom?
I had a 7-2 or 6-3.
Okay.
You know, and that 4-3 is like, they're just bullshit cards if you ask me. 4-3s you have to give every possible round to Liam Williams. Or sorry, it was 5-4. You have to give every possible round. Very hard to give Liam Smith 4 rounds in that fight. And the other thing as well is like, oh well, maybe we'll get to it later. What Joe Gallagher was saying in the corner, like saying how everybody wanted.
Yeah, what was your take on that? Some people were suggesting that was because Liam Smith may sign with Hearn. Some people were suggesting it was because Liam Smith missed weight.
Well, there's only one person's fault it is to miss weight. It's Liam fucking Smith.
Yeah, but they were saying that Frank wanted him to lose because if Liam Smith won the fight, neither of them could, you know, get the world championship and get a fight versus Cotto. Whereas if Liam Williams won, Frank could make that fight. I guess that was the point.
Yeah, well, like Joe Gallagher is saying that his promoter was annoyed that he didn't make weight so he could win a world title. Give us a fucking break. You know, I'll tell you what's happening here. This is my take on it, right? And I haven't heard anybody saying this yet, but I think knows that Kell Brook is going to lose against Errol Spence. And I think they're preparing him already to go up to 154, and they want to be able to be on Sky so we can do pay-per-view versus Kell Brook. I reckon that's what's going to happen. Give it 2 fights, give it 6 months. It'll be Kell Brook versus Liam Smith pay-per-view on Sky. And but it's weird. Joe Gallagher is willing to burn his fighter's promoter live on television like that. That's a thing I haven't seen before.
Yeah, very, very strange. Very strange. Last question, Tom. Where do both guys go from here? Do you think the rematch happens?
I think Liam Smith won't give him the rematch. And to be honest with you, like, I've always disliked Joe Gallagher because you get to hear him talking in interviews. You know, he's a very dislikable guy.
Yeah.
But I never really understood, because I haven't been on Twitter that long, I never really understood why people dislike the Smith brothers so much. You know, all the boxing hardcore seem to like to test the Smith brothers. But I must say that, like, all of them acted extremely classlessly. You know, even Liam Smith, after a post-fight interview, to go as far as to say I was going to knock him out the next round anyway. Like, if you're after getting a lucky decision like that, you know, a lucky decision where you headbutt a guy, you get away with it, and then the fight gets stopped on the cut, and you sit there and you don't be gracious about your victory. You don't even say anything like, oh, it was a good fight or anything. You just say, I was going to stop him anyway. And all the other things on Twitter and everything the other boys were doing post-fight. You know, I just think the Smith family came across pretty fucking gracelessly or classlessly. That's the right word.
Okay. No, I hear you, Tom. I hear you. Let's bring in Paul. Paul, at the time of the fight ending, Did you think that Liam Smith was coming back into the fight, and did you think that Liam Smith may have actually been in a position to force a stoppage or win a decision?
I don't think so. I mean, I thought he was coming back into the fight, but for me, I think he would have. Two. What round was it? It was the ninth or the 10th?
After 9, yeah.
After 9, yeah. I had it 7-2. So 10, 11, 12. So yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, on my card, he wouldn't have been able to win on points. I can see 6-3. I can't see anything closer than that. I thought Liam Williams clearly was winning that fight. I thought it was a very, very deliberate headbutt. Anybody saying, you know, I mean, yeah, I mean, I to be honest, I completely agree with everything Irish just said. You know, that like, why on earth didn't Gary Lockett call the doctor? I just cannot get my head around that. I can't get my head around it. I really can't. Can anybody tell me why he did?
The only thing I can think of, mate, the only thing I'll say in his defence, look, he was the trainer for Nick Blackwell. Maybe he saw the cut. Maybe he panicked. I don't know. But it wasn't the right decision, I don't think.
Well, yeah, I mean, he shattered, but I mean, like, he wouldn't have been putting him in.
Tell you what, Paul.
By calling the doctor, would he? I mean, just by letting him just go back into the next round, that would have been putting him in jeopardy. But by calling a doctor, he wouldn't have been. And I believe a doctor would have looked at that cut, that it was a bad cut. I mean, you know, where it was as well, it wasn't even like it was up on the eyebrow. It was right on the eyelid, wasn't it?
It was like Fury's one against Cassie. I tell you, I hope Gary Lockett is wearing fucking nappies, because he's going to have a long streaks of shit run down his legs after that corner work.
Yeah, it was that was bad. I mean, yeah, I didn't like it. It stunk to me. I mean, I won't say any more than that, but it did stink. Also agreed that the atmosphere looked awful. I mean, Terry Flanagan walking in with Ricky Hatton to fucking, was it Blue Moon? And there was, I mean, you could have heard a fucking pin drop. I mean, is there an unbeaten fighter, world champion, with less, just less going for him? Like, as in, like, personality, no kind of like, not very fan favorite. I thought, you know, also agree. I thought he let Petro get close to him too much. He's got a decent jab as well, Flanagan. That's the thing. Just neglected to use it. I mean, yeah, it was a poor performance. It was a poor performance. I thought it was quite close, actually.
Yeah. It was a competitive fight, definitely. Does the Liam Smith missing weight, the Liam Smith headbutt, you know, the Liam Smith post-fight comments, does it all leave quite a bad taste in the mouth looking back on it in hindsight, Paul? Very much so.
Very much so. I mean, that as well. I was going to knock him out anyway. I don't know what he was basing that on. I mean, he was coming on a bit stronger. He was getting a bit better, but he would have had to have, because he was pretty much getting schooled in the early rounds for me. I thought Liam Williams was much, like, far the better fighter in those early rounds. But it does leave a bad taste in the mouth, and I can see him moving away. I don't see any of the reason why Gallagher would throw Frank under the bus so blatantly on national TV. For me, that tells me that he knows that a change is afoot. Change is going to come.
Definitely. And what about the future for Flanagan, Paul? What fights realistically do you think he's going to be in next, and who would you like to see him up against?
Do you know what? I don't know. It is only just a feeling. This is not based on any knowledge or anything, or even insider talk or anything, but I can actually see the Lomachenko fight getting made.
Do you think Lomachenko potentially would view him as an easy way of picking up a belt ahead of a unification match with Garcia on pay-per-view in the States, perhaps?
I think he would see him as an easy fight at the new weight. I think he would maybe see him as somebody that he doesn't have to necessarily worry about as power-wise as much as he would have to worry about Mikey. I think he might see it as a preparation fight for Mikey. And also, picking up a belt, it sets the scene nicely, doesn't it, for I don't know, end of the year, beginning of next year or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely. Do you think if that fight is to be made, Lomachenko 12-0 him?
Flanagan.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be honest, yeah, probably. He might pick up a couple of rounds, but I think Lomachenko will beat him quite easily. I mean, he's a better fighter than Jason Sosa, I think. But based on that performance last night, if that Terry Flanagan came up, he probably would 12-0 him. Yeah, to be honest.
Interesting. All right. Okay. Cheers for that, Paul. Let's bring Jet in. Jet, first and foremost, Terry Flanagan. From your take, was it just a poor performance, or was this, a product of him stepping up in levels and, maybe finally fighting someone in the top 10?
The fight itself was awful. I think I was, I get slated in the comments. Can you hear me? Or
Yeah, coming through, mate.
Okay. I get slated in the comments in the podcast comments saying, "Oh, I'm an uninspiring character. I don't know why I watch boxing and I'm boring and that sort of stuff." So it was actually a surprise that people actually agreed with me that the Flanagan fight was absolutely terrible. It was boring, and it was a very close fight. I scored it 7-5 on the night, and I have zero interest to actually go watch it again. But I do think, in terms of levels, I think he's definitely plateaued at a sort of, bottom tier world level, the bottom of the top 10. He has a belt. He's one of the better fighters in the division, but he ultimately there are flaws in his game that the top fighters, the top sort of maybe 6 or 7 will pick up on, and they'll expose. And I do think to an extent he was exposed against Petro, who is a fairly limited pressure fighter, and very, very small pressure fighter in that. I thought he was getting in with that straight right. I know that's the sort of Southpaw's kryptonite shot, but I do think he was getting, just clipped with loads of unnecessary shots. When he was boxing at times, he did do well, but he negated a lot of that boxing for whatever reason. And, it was just a really flat, poor performance. I know people say he struggles to make 135, but for me, he could move up. I know, and he'll probably get, a shot if he wants out a champion, most likely Terence Crawford if he takes that fight, because the WBO normally give you a mandatory spot if you go up a weight division. But if he's struggling to keep someone like Petro off him, who's a midget for the weight, especially, then I don't know how he's going to fare out 140. I wasn't high on Terry Flanagan before. I did think he had some potential, but it's hard to get up for any of his fights. One, because he's very lackluster in the ring and non-existent out of it. Let's put it that way. The Liam Smith fight, Jack Catterall looked decent, actually. He didn't look too bad. I don't know if you guys caught my tweet. I tweeted out saying How does everyone rate the sort of domestic 140 prospects? Bar, I was supposed to put bar Ricky Burns, and a lot of people have him, you know, just behind the sort of guys at that level. You know, O'Hara Davis, Josh Taylor, who's the other one? Tyrone Nurse. So
Mikey will be screaming at the screen.
Sorry?
Mikey will be screaming at the screen that you.
Yeah, I know. He tweeted me and he goes, "I think Nurse beats him," but he looks handy. I know he did look good earlier on in his career. I think you're watching him quite early on as well, but he's kind of faded into the shadows since, and obviously he's had some hand injuries and that sort of stuff. But you know, it was a good win against Gethin. You know, a decent-ish name on his record, but. We'll see. We'll see. I think he's supposed to be mandatory actually for Tyrone Nurse, so I don't know what's going on with that fight. And they can make an in-house fight. Nation at this moment in time. Liam Williams. I thought, you know what, that headbutt ruined the fight one, and I think it was, you know, an intentional headbutt. Maybe Joe Gallagher probably told him, you know, you're behind on the scorecard secretly if we did pick up in the corner, but you know, it was very, very dubious. You know, very dubious. You know, Irish has been on form tonight, I'll be honest, but the one thing I disagree with him on tonight is pulling him out. I do think, you know, what's worrying for me with Liam Williams is he boxed really well. He did get, you know, sucked into a bit of a scrap. I had it 7-2, but at times, you know, he was negating his boxing. But, you know, he said he was tired after 5 or 6 rounds. And I don't know whether that's because he's never been worked like that in his career. If he's tight at the weight, you know, I don't know. That doesn't look good. If you're tiring within 6 rounds, that's you need to get a new strength and conditioning coach.
Here's something that we haven't thought about. Like, sorry to cut across there, Jeff, but it's like Liam Smith didn't make the last £2. Didn't even try to make them. You know,
I was just going to come on to that. I was literally going to come on to that.
Isn't that a massive amount to miss? £2 fucking pounds.
It wasn't it. I thought it was actually 1.5. They put, you know,
it was one like 10.
No, it was £2. It was £1 and 15 ounces, and there's 16 ounces in a pound. So I think we can effectively say it was £2. But the WBO official,
that was
mistake, didn't he?
Shoddy with the WBO. Yeah, that was very, very, very dodgy. Like, you know, if you're missing weight, I know Jason Sosa actually missed weight. He missed weight. He came in at 132 on the first attempt, but he actually got 2 hours. So I thought the rule was 2 hours. I'm not sure.
It is 2 hours, and it was always 2 hours. I cannot understand how they messed that up.
But here, listen, your man Sosa was only 2 ounces overweight. Yeah, 2 ounces is only like 40 grams or something. You know, just do a piss and it'll be gone. A small piss. Like he lost £2, and there is no way that Liam Smith was ever going to lose £2 in 2 hours. Just not happening.
I think it's unlikely. I think it's unlikely, but I don't actually think it's impossible.
Did you see him at the weigh-in?
Yeah.
Like he looked like there was no £2 coming off him. I think that honestly, I've got conspiracy here. I think that they did not want to lose against Liam Williams, so they purposefully didn't try and make weight. And I think that they that his advantage was going to be relevant and towards the end of the fight, because he's not going to lose those 2 hard pounds. So I'm very skeptical of that. I'm very, very skeptical.
A huge payday against Canelo. He admitted he blew up by over 2 stone between fights. I'm not 100% sure. But
2 stones nothing, Tom.
2 stones
like those guys.
Yeah,
Sorry, Tom.
That's a decent amount for a light middleweight.
Jet, are you in the car? We can hear your indicator going.
Yeah, but yeah, I take your point. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. Let me bring Jet back in. Jet, I wanted your take on heavyweight prospect Daniel Dubois. Some of the excitement around Dubois. seems to be getting slightly ahead of itself from my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, he was supposed to face David Howe on the card, wasn't he? And then I don't know what happened with the fight. He's obviously ended up facing Marcus Kelly, was it? And you know, he looked awful. To give a shout out to yourself, you know, the video was, or the pre-fight was looking like a bodybuilder and against a professional champion or something like that. So
yeah, you're slightly quiet, mate. I appreciate you're probably in the car, but if there's any way of either speaking a bit louder or closer to the
yeah. Sorry.
No worries.
I know. I'm just gonna park up, so I'll be thing. But yeah, that was thing from Dubois until he's in with a semi-credible win. Semi-credible name. But yeah, it's kind of a waiting game with him, isn't it? I think people are getting a bit too excited for a new sort of breed of heavyweight prospects, and yeah, maybe they just need to tone it down. We don't really learn anything from. So yeah.
Do you know what? I've been critical on this channel about the fanboys, like the Joshua fanboys, the Golovkin fanboys, etc. But there's a new group that have popped up in the last 6 months. And if you're watching this, I'm not referring to any particular individual here. I'm just referring to the collective, if you like. So nothing, nothing personal against any individual. But the amount of messages I've had, how do you think Dubois does against Fury? How do you think Dubois does against Joshua? There seems to be this Box Nation hardcore collective group of fans who are just getting ridiculous about Dubois and other Box Nation prospects. I mean, if that Marcus Kelly had been in the ring with any of the top 20 British heavyweights, and I'm including guys like Nick Webb, I'm including guys like Tom Little, David Allen, Dominic Akinlade, Nathan Gorman. Yeah, that guy would have been blasted out there in 30 seconds by any of those guys. He was absolutely woeful. Now, Dubois looks like a talent. He looks good in the amateurs. He looks like a very nice guy. And I do hope that he can, become a top prospect and go on to great things. I'm a big fan of Daniel Dubois. But, to be asking questions like how he does against Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua after that 30-second the bin man is just frankly ludicrous. I mean, I think Daniel Dubois is 19 years old. Let's manage him properly and let's get him some experience against journeymen who can give him a round or two. That fight was an absolute disgrace. Let's have it right. Tom, Paul, do either of you want to get in on Daniel Dubois or Martin Geffen Catterall at all?
Well, the Daniel Dubois, go on, Tom, go on.
Oh, you fire ahead.
Oh, cheers. Yeah, well, I just want to say, fucking hell. I mean, I don't like to know what other people say, but that opponent, my God, from the minute he got in the ring, honestly, that guy looked like somebody, I live right in the centre of my town. I could look down. I live on the 16th floor. I could look down on my balcony on a Friday or Saturday night and see guys swinging like that. Any Friday or Saturday night, I can see them out there on the fucking thing, pint in one hand or a kebab in their hand, swinging like that. The guy was just woeful. And the first punch he got caught with, he just fucking, he went down and just cowered, covered his head. I mean, are you seriously telling me that they couldn't have got a better opponent than that? I know it was on 5 weeks notice or whatever, short notice and that. But surely, in world heavyweight boxing, surely there would have been a better opponent than that.
Mate, they should have got him someone who had 10 fights, 10 losses. Someone who'd been in the ring that many times and someone who had a track record of taking prospects 2 or 3 rounds. And it wasn't Daniel Dubois, the more high-profile example, but there was a cruiserweight prospect. His name may have been Jordan Thompson. I can't recollect. But there was a cruiserweight prospect on the bill who was something like 5-0, making his debut for Frank Warren. And his opponent was every bit as bad. This was a guy who refused to take his clothes off at the weigh-in because his physical condition was that bad. He didn't want to take his clothes off. It was, I don't know where they found these guys.
Well, this guy, what was his name? Marcus Kelly. He didn't seem to give a shit. But he honestly, did you see him at the start, like bowing and that with this like sheepish grin? He honestly looked like somebody had pulled him in off the street. He like couldn't quite believe he was there and whatnot. Like, you know, it was awful.
I tell you, lads, if I look like Marcus Kelly, you wouldn't find me keeping my clothes on. I'd be struggling to keep them on. I want to share that with everybody else. Another thing, do you know what was great about it? I was watching it with my missus, and she was going, Jesus, look at the state of this guy. And I said, yeah, no, it's just his debut, to be over in 30 seconds. It was over in 25 seconds. And the thing is, when your man hit him, like when he was lying on the ground, you could see he was having to get pummeled. He was lying in the corner, and he had a big grin in his face. You could just tell he was thinking. He's going like, I've had one fight, and I get called up. Now I'm on telly, and I'm fighting like the next coming, like fucking Lennox Lewis, and he just barred me. Isn't this fucking great crack? You're like, what were the fucking chances? Last week I was fucking working as a butcher. This week, I'm getting spanked by Lennox Lewis.
Yeah,
fucking brilliant.
I think he was thinking. I think he was thinking, fucking hell, I've just got like, let's say it was 10 grand. I've just got 10 grand for that. I'll be able to get the fucking dog's bollocks kebab this week.
Yeah, 10 grand me arse.
Yeah, I doubt. Yeah, but oh my god, that was bad. And the Box Nation fanboys, as soon as I even comment that it was bad, the Box Nation fanboys go straight on to what was Anthony Joshua's first 10 opponents. Like, even though I've never been a Joshua advocate, I've never been a Joshua fanboy, straight away the Box Nation Muppets, the fanboys are on screaming about Anthony Joshua. Well, the truth is, I never saw Anthony Joshua fight anyone quite that bad. That was a real new low.
What about Charles Martin?
Charles Martin, yeah. Marcus Kelly versus Charles Martin would be a good fight for pay-per-view, certainly.
It's probably 50-50 now, given the state of Charles Martin.
Yeah, but do you guys agree with me? Like, Daniel Dubois, for me, as far as I'm concerned, I view him as a guy I haven't seen fight yet. I mean, he may be very good, he may be very bad. I just view him as someone who we haven't seen box yet. I don't understand how people can be calling him a world champion.
Completely agree, Tom. The question, how good is Daniel Dubois? How does Daniel Dubois do against A, B, or C? At this stage, we just don't know. We don't know any more about him whatsoever. He just got in the ring with a guy that, I don't know, like really didn't belong in a professional boxing ring. If you're telling me that is a professional athlete, then I don't know what's wrong with you. Like,
what's funny, Paul, is he's 1-0. I want to track down some video footage of the guy he beat up.
Yeah. Well,
let's give that guy some visibility live on the podcast. Let's investigate who it was. So Marcus Kelly, now 1-1. Worryingly, Boxrec have him as the 40th best heavyweight in Britain. So there are 2 worst heavyweights. And he beat Andy Mitchell, Norton 3. So Andy Mitchell is slightly worse than Marcus Kelly, according to the resumes. So there you go. There you go. But yeah, guys, we've spent nearly an hour and a half on last week's boxing, but I do think that was the main talking points for this week's show. But before we move on to the news and next week's fights, does anyone want to get any comments in on the panel whatsoever about either the Box Nation BT Sports card or the the Lomachenko bill before we move it on.
About which other bill?
The Lomachenko bill.
No, just Nickel Adams I saw. I thought she looked all right. I thought Jack Catterall looked good. I thought he looked proper good. I think he's up there with any of those British light welterweights. That's the most competitive division in British boxing.
Yeah, I thought Catterall looked good. I thought Martin Geffen was too bad to be believed. He looked shot to pieces. But yeah, respect to Catterall. He did well, and he's. I think they're going to put him in against Tyrone Nurse, from what I hear. Tom, who would you have in that fight?
That's a good fight. Like Catterall apparently had his hands fixed. His knockouts dried up. Apparently he had bad hands, and he got an operation on them. So he looked like he's hitting with full power because he immediately started hurting him. And I've watched Catterall fighting like over the last 2-3 years since he knocked out Tom Stoker, I think. And then he kind of went on a run of like these kind of 10-round decisions against Mexicans and stuff like this, where he looked like that power was mystery. It was just totally gone. It was like it was a fluke. But his power looked legitimately back. So that's good to see.
Absolutely. Okay, brilliant. We'll move it on to the news in the sport. What I'll do here, guys, because there's quite a lot to get through, I'll give each news topic. I'll only do one news topic per panelist, and then, if certain topics catch the imagination, we'll open it up. But I won't ask every person on the panel for a comment on every piece of news. Let's start with Jet. Jet, are you good to speak, mate?
Yeah, sure.
Wicked. Let's start with Luke Campbell, Darley's Perez. Fight announced potentially for the Anthony Joshua undercard, although I'll just check that. What do you make of that as a matchup, Jet?
Yeah, not a bad matchup. I've always thought Luke Campbell, needs to get step up soon because due to his Olympic background and that sort of stuff and his amateur game. So, it's a good fight. The only problem is Darley's Perez has been not inactive. He's been semi-inactive, and he fought at 140. So whether or not he's going to make the 135 limit, that's another sort of question. Whether or not he can make it effectively, I guess, is the better question. And he's had a couple of weeks' notice, 3 weeks, 4 weeks' notice. So not ideal preparation. Hopefully he's been taken over in the gym. But Luke Campbell with this other opponent, maybe the Mendy fight was the next fight, and then this sort of fight. But obviously they've gone in at the deep end, number one WBA spot, final eliminator. So yeah, he should be beating the likes of Darley's Perez. I'll be honest. Darley's Perez is a top 20, 25 operator. And if Crawler can do a real number on him, I do think Luke Campbell is better than Crawler, and I think Crawler can do a demolition job on Darley's Perez, I think.
Interesting stuff. And that is for the Joshua undercard. You mentioned this is the final eliminator in the WBA. Who's the WBA champion, Jeff?
Jorge Linares.
Oh, Jorge Linares. Okay.
Yeah, so it's a bit interesting because he had the WBC silver belt, so he was effectively, in the top sort of top 3, maybe 4 of the WBC rankings. But as soon as Mikey Garcia's won the belt of the Slatic Cannon, I do think Eddie Hearn's probably pushed him another way. I do think he might have some success against Linares if that fight was to come off. I do think Linares is going down the Garcia route with that unification fight. I do think he should have probably gone for someone like a Robert Easter. I know Shafikov's actually the mandatory because he beat Richard Comey, but that route would have been thing. I do think Easter, is probably the beater, the most beatable out of the champions, or maybe him or Flanagan. But I thought that route might have served him better. But they've obviously gone down the WBA, so best of luck to them. And let's see if the fight gets made or Linares moves up or whatnot.
Okay. Sticking with you, Jet, the Zolani Teti fight has been rescheduled. Apparently, they wanted it as a bigger feature rather than just an undercard fight. And I believe that is now taking place on the Leicester bill.
Is that the Tommy Langford one?
The Tommy Langford and Tyrone Nurse one. So what's your thoughts on that? When you've got guys who are campaigning at those very low weight classes, especially a guy like Zolani Tete, who's known as a fairly big guy for those lower weight classes. Could they have already started a weight cut? You know, could they be getting down to fighting weight when it's cancelled so late? And could it prove difficult to then, you know, have to put weight back on and come down again so quickly? What's your thoughts on that dynamic?
Yeah, it's very difficult at those lighter weight classes because, you know, you're obviously going to gain weight in between fights, regardless of even if you're in the gym, you know, you're going to put on muscle mass or that sort of stuff. So, or fat. So it's difficult in the, you know, if you have short notice. I think that Langford deal is in a few weeks or something like that?
Yeah, I think like a fortnight or something.
Yeah, so, you know, rescheduling, he might be already being camped Zolani Tete, but I think, you know, in the long run, when these bills get cancelled, I know Frank has a history with, you know, fights getting cancelled or shows getting cancelled and whatnot. So, you know, I do think it's detrimental going later down the line, especially if they want to be a serious competitor. They need to, you know, have guys like Zolani Tete out more regularly. You know, he's a definite world class fighter. And I do think, you know, if you want to get more and more people coming over from the Sky platform to the BT and Box Nation platform, they need guys like him out. So, yeah, I mean, obviously the fight's been made. It's a WBO final eliminator, I think. And, yeah, obviously it's good to get him out, but, you know, it'd be better if it was earlier, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. And again, we'll stick with yourself, Jet. Prince Patel leaves Frank Warren. Now, I know Prince Patel may not be known as one of the highest class, you know, operators out there, but he's certainly someone who has created interest, and there's been a bit of hype around his name. What's your take on the job Frank Warren's done on Prince Patel? Do you think Prince Patel's made a rod for his own back by being such a big talker and maybe not having performances that have lived up to the hype, or do you think it's a missed opportunity for Frank Warren?
Yeah, I do think it's a bit of both, I'll be honest. You know, in terms of Frank promoting him, he never really pushed him, even in, you know, the sort of IFL TV interviews or the Box Nation ones on YouTube now on the official channel. So I do think, yeah, he should have pushed guys like him, you know, maybe similar how he pushes Anthony Yard. I know Anthony Yard's not pushed very hard, but at least he has somewhat of a following and a gathering in, you know, in terms of fan base. But Prince Patel, he's a massive talker, but you know, not a smooth operator in the ring. Let's put it that way. You know, there's obviously some rumors that Frank didn't want to televise one of his fights because he was so bad. So maybe that's kind of, you know, saying what kind of guy Frank is, that he's obviously seen what he needs to see, and he just wants to, you know, let Prince Patel loose as easy as possible, I guess, so he can work with him again if anything does happen relevant in Prince Patel's career. And we just haven't heard from Prince Patel. You know, we were used to hearing him every other week. Now we don't hear him every other month. So, yeah, it's obviously we're going to have to catch up on his fights on YouTube probably, because I don't think Eddie Hearn's going to be champing out the bit to sign him up. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, Prince Patel says he's got a big announcement coming, so who knows? Potentially Eddie Hearn will sign him, make a fight with Charlie Edwards, I guess. Yeah,
let's say I wouldn't be surprised, because I know they have sort of 6 or 7 amateur fights between the two, but, you know, Charlie Edwards is fighting Ian Butcher, I think, this weekend, if I'm correct.
Yes.
So obviously he's had a world title fight against Casemiro, so he'll try and put that on as, you know, not a co-feature, but the one underneath that, the sort of third fight of the night or something like that. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's looking to get that made. Let's see what Prince Patel comes up with again. Hey,
them two have got a bit of a beef as well, going back a few years, Prince Patel and Charlie Edwards.
Yeah, they've had like 6 or 7 amateur fights, and I think Edwards has beaten them in most of them. That's what they use the beef for, 100%.
Yeah, I've seen interviews where they're calling each other scumbag, like he's a proper scumbag and everything. Like it's proper, like it's not your manufactured beef. Like they fucking hate each other. Like,
yeah.
But look, lads, with somebody like Prince Patel, you never know, like whether what he's like in his private life, whether he could just be a complete mentalist. You know, he might just be so off the rails, you just can't manage him or do anything with him.
Yeah.
You know, he has a similar personality, kind of like Naz used to talk like him and act like him. Frank was able to manage Naz because Naz had dedication in the gym and was a great fighter. But I can imagine Prince Patel is just like, I can imagine the reason we never saw him again has got to be something more than just he's not a great fighter, because Frank puts on loads of fucking shite fighters that can sell tickets.
Yeah. Presumably something gone on behind the scenes there, and potentially it'd be something that comes out. But it's an interesting story in one sense that he, and I guess Romeo was the other example, was this highly hyped young 4-round fighter who signed with Frank Warren and has kind of dropped off the face of the planet. And it'd be interesting to see what Frank does next time he has one of those fighters. Let's put it that way. Jet, Manuel Charr versus Tyson Fury. What did you make of that little incident?
Yeah, it was weird to say the least. Manuel Charr, obviously, he's had a few defeats and that sort of stuff, but coming over to the UK to call out Tyson Fury, who he knows is out of shape, bit weird. But obviously he was trying to generate buzz for a potential fight if that happens. Whether or not the fight is actually viable and it will happen, I don't think so. But it'd be a good comeback opponent, if Fury was not going to jump in with the world champion straight away or a top 5, top 10 guy. So yeah, obviously it created a bit of a laugh, I guess. Tyson Fury looking massive, and obviously them being friendly, and a Manuel Charr is like being pushed away or something like that. It's a bit silly to see those sort of things, but gives you a good chuckle, I guess. Yeah, just weird, really, to be honest.
Definitely. Okay, no, cheers, Jack. Let me go over to Paul briefly to discuss some more of the news that's currently active within the sport. Paul, Anthony Joshua has been sparring Mariusz Wach and Joe Joyce ahead of the clash with Vladimir Klitschko. Vladimir has been sparring Gerald Washington and Robert Helenius, amongst others. Give us your take on those guys as as potential sparring partners.
Well, I mean, Mariusz Wach, I suppose you can understand. He's a tall guy. I mean, what is Klitschko an inch taller than AJ, or whether they're the same height? Is he?
They're both billed at 6'6".
Both billed at 6'6". Yeah. Okay, so roughly the same height. I suppose you can understand it. Gerald, I mean, like, I don't know. Gerald Washington and Robert Helenius are. I'm not sure how they're supposed to prepare Vlad for AJ. I mean, these are guys that are pretty slow. I mean, like, I don't know what you guys think. I just think, like, maybe that he could have gotten better sparring than that. I would have. I mean, like, AJ's quick. If I was in Klitschko's camp, if I was Klitschko, I'd be wanting. I'd maybe get a cruiserweight in, to try and sort of like,
or maybe someone like Spilka, maybe someone like that.
Yeah, but I mean, Spilka's really short, though, isn't he? That's the only.
Yeah, I mean, some of the cruiserweights, they won't be necessarily big either. So I don't know.
Yeah, true. I mean, with the Ukrainian connection, I'd bring someone like Usyk in. Usyk's a big guy. He's got a bit of speed. You're going to have, the lighter you go, the generally you're going to have a little bit more speed. That's the only reason, not for the size, but just for the speed, because AJ is quite quick for a heavyweight. But yeah, I mean, I suppose they haven't got a huge amount of choice, have they? Because there'll be guys that will be in camps. If guys have got fights on, there'll be guys that will want too much money, and so I think their sort of like pickings may be quite slim anyway. So, I mean, yeah, not really much more to say on that, to be honest.
Okay. Natasha Jonas has turned pro and will be working with Steve Goodwin and Joe Gallagher. Any interest, Paul? Does this show that women's boxing really is heating up with the recent turning professional of Nicola Adams and Katie Taylor? And would you have interested in Natasha Jonas versus Katie Taylor fight in the pros?
To be completely honest, I've got no idea who she is. I've never seen her fight. The only thing that strikes me is it's kind of like maybe this influx of female fighters is because of Katie Taylor getting a bit of success, and now promoters are trying to sign up. I mean, like the Nicola Adams thing. I mean, it's trying to get the parallels. I think and get the success that Katie Taylor's had, but I think Katie Taylor already had quite a big following in Ireland, didn't she? And so I don't see it really taking off, to be honest, women's boxing. Not because I disagree with it or anything, but just because I don't know that there's really the depth and the richness of competition out there for these girls to fight,
Totally. No, I hear you, mate. I hear you. Let's bring Irish Tom back in. Irish, one other news story: Adonis Stevenson versus Andre Fonfara 2. The rematch has been confirmed. I know Fonfara had some success in the first fight, and I know he's had some relevant wins. Obviously against Chad Dawson and against world champion Nathan Cleverly. But are you? Surely Adonis Stevenson versus Fonfara is not the rematch we were all pining for at this point.
Let's just get one thing straight. The WBA regular belt is not a proper world title. Secondly, this is the rematch we've all been waiting for. This is the equivalent of, Holyfield versus Lewis 2, Morales Barrera 2, Mikey Ward versus... what do you call him?
Gatti.
Yeah, 2. So yeah, it's a great fight. Looking forward to it.
Are you
much better?
What's going on with Adonis Stevenson though? I mean, he's not a fighter, and it's just disappointment after disappointment after disappointment.
Look, we should not be talking about him because until he fights someone good, he hasn't fought anybody in about 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, it really is disappointing. Tom, you got any other thoughts on any of the other news topics? Tyson Fury, Luke Campbell, anything to throw into the mix on any of those, mate?
Not really, no. I thought we might just do a whole 2-hour show on the Emmanuel Char versus Tyson Fury video. I wonder why people are you boys not so interested in what Joe Gallagher did, like burning fish eyes live on TV. I think that's kind of crazy. I think that's very shocking.
Yeah. Did you see Frank Warren's response on IFL TV, Tom?
Yeah.
What did you make of that?
Well, Frank's also got your man. It's Paul Butler. So is he going to try and bring Paul Butler over with him too? It's a bit strange and do such a thing, because you never know what happens in these things. Eddie Hearn could, something could happen to the Hearn stable and then he's not doing too well and Frank's the main man again or whatever. It's just very weird. I've never seen a trainer bridges like that with a promoter. I've just never seen it before.
To be fair, Tom, look, Joe made those comments and he must have had an awareness that they could not be broadcast. But also at the same time, it's not like he came out and said it in an interview. It was a conversation to his fighter when his fighter was behind on the cards and he was trying to motivate his fighter to pick up rounds. I mean, I don't think he's intentionally gone out and slagged Frank to the mass media, even though his comments perhaps were a bit ill-advised given the circumstances.
Well, remember, this is Joe Gallagher, and also, you're giving him a lot of benefit of the doubt.
I am, yeah.
You know what I mean? Any kind of normal, like, thing is, if you're going to be a big trainer like that and you're going to be dealing with all these big guys, that kind of business is so political. You know what I mean? It's massively political. You got to understand how to play the game. So I think Joe Gallagher trying to bring us is. I think that, like, what I can deduce from that is because Joe Gallagher was saying that he should be a pay-per-view fighter. The only guy that Liam Smith can be pay-per-view against is Kell Brook. So I think that Kell Brook is going to be moving to 154, and Joe Gallagher trying to bring him over there, and they're going to try and make a big money fight out of that. And so, like that, I just that makes me think that Eddie Hearn is fairly sure that Kell Brook is not going to be able to beat Errol Spence. I have to check them again.
I don't think Kell Brook Liam Smith's pay-per-view.
Of course it is. Two British guys. Eddie be able to build that. Come on.
I'm afraid I think it is quite easily, Paul.
But I mean, Liam Smith's not a big name at all. Not at all.
I guess he did fight Canelo, and I guess his surname is quite well known. But yeah, I appreciate your comments. I mean, Liam Smith himself isn't a big name, but let's not forget they were going to have Kell Brook versus Diego Chavez on pay-per-view.
Yeah, I guess.
Kell Brook and Frankie Gavin on pay-per-view, didn't they?
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, true enough.
And since then, Kell Brook's profile will have been raised exponentially, really, with the fights against Golovkin and Spence. I actually think Kell Brook won't be on free-to-air TV again, unless he gets like back-to-back. Well, he would get back-to-back losses, actually, I guess, if he lost to Spence, like Tom's saying. But, unless he really took a bad loss, I think Kell Brook is now going to be a pay-per-view fighter, I'm afraid.
Well, I don't know about. I think his stock went up after the Golovkin fight, definitely, because the perception was, and certainly among casuals and stuff, that kind of like get very, very heavily influenced by what they're watching on the TV, and what guys like Frotch are saying, oh, he's rocked him and blah, 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 when, anybody that actually knows what they're looking at know that Kell Brook actually got a bit of a pasting in that fight. His stock did go up, but I think that was largely because Golovkin was billed as such a killer, and because Golovkin was a middleweight. I think if he loses to Errol Spence, I'm not sure he stays as. I'm not sure he retains that status, because Errol Spence is, although Errol Spence is hyped for a prospect, he's a prospect nonetheless. He's a welterweight. He's not a middleweight. He's not this big name that Triple G was. I think that will hurt him quite badly, that loss, if he loses to Spence.
True. I guess it depends on the nature of the loss, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
but you can see Hearn already saying, "Oh, it was the weight. Kell knew we couldn't make it, but he wouldn't pull out because he's a warrior. That sort of thing."
Yeah, true.
You can see it already. Guys, we're up to 120 people watching live, so hope you guys are enjoying it. If you are, please take the time to hit the thumbs up button, which helps me out massively. Just back to the news, guys. Before we move it on to next week's boxing action, do any of you on the panel want to get in on any of the other news stories?
I just wanted to say Tyson Fury will like this potential for the Tyson Fury Jar and everything. Tyson Fury is not going to be fighting any time this year. If he even fights again, that man is 25, 26 stone. He's fucking huge. There's no way he's fighting this year. No chance.
Yeah. I don't think it's impossible that he'll fight this year, because he's still relatively young. He's a lot younger than he looks, and he has shown an ability to get in shape amazingly quickly in the past. And you know, he has also stepped into the ring before weighing in and around 20 stone. But yeah, I agree. His return is certainly not going to be quick, is it? But I wouldn't rule out him, you know, getting a return in towards the end of the year. But he's in a pretty outrageous shape, isn't he?
I mean, what was he in the Klitschko fight? About 19 stone or something?
I think about 18 and a half, yeah.
18 and a half. So, like, going on what he looks like to me, he looks like he's about 26 stone. So that would mean he would have to lose 7.5 stone. I mean,
the weight that he sheds could fight in the strawweight division.
Yeah. He needs to shed Roman Gonzalez, doesn't he?
We all need to shed him.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you, though, Paul. And as I've speculated several times on the channel before, I don't believe Tyson Fury is 25 stone. I actually believe he's closer to 30 stone, which is not a good look.
Yeah, I think he's quite a bit myself, and I mean, I've said this for a while now. I didn't think Tyson Fury's career was going to be long, and I stand by it. I think we've seen the best of Tyson Fury. I really do. I don't see him ever. I just don't think he's going to end up back in top, you know, at the top of the tree again.
Do you know what? In many ways, if Fury's career was to end with, you know, that victory over Vladimir Klitschko, I think he'd go down as like a cult hero. I think he'd go down as one of the greatest talents that never was, you know, the greatest wasted potentials there's ever been in boxing.
Yeah.
But I'd almost rather that legacy than him coming back and getting chinned by Manuel Char. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
It'd be such a shame for it to end that way, you know?
Definitely, or come back and like just keep trying to slog it out for another few years and keep getting fucking bad losses to people that he should have been wiping the floor with. Like, you know, that'd be even worse, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd almost prefer that, to be honest. I really.
Yeah. And if he needs the money, you know, I could see him coming back and beating 2 or 3 bin men and stepping up to fight Joshua for 10 million or 20 million and then sailing off into the sunset. You know, if he needs the money, then I understand that needs must. But, you know, from what I understand, the Furies are fairly wealthy people with their own money. And Tyson Fury's obviously earned, you know, he may not have earned Floyd Mayweather money, but I'm sure he's earned more than most. Let's put it that way. So, you know, hopefully he doesn't need to fight for pure finance. Let's put it that way.
Does anybody know what he got for the Klitschko fight?
I honestly cannot remember off the top of my head, but I think at one stage I did know. If there's anyone in the chat who knows that, you know, with any sort of relative certainty what he got for that Klitschko chat, put it down in the chat. I'm not really looking for what you guess he got. I'm looking for if anything was actually released and people know. But I'll read it out if anything comes through in the chat. Good stuff. Did anyone want to get in on any of the other topics before we move on to next week's action?
Nope.
A lot of people in the chat, 3 or 4 people are saying 5 million. That seems to be a figure that's been bandied around by Mark, by Mikey, by Modern Broadcast. So maybe he got 5 million. You know, I guess he's got to pay promoter, trainer, cornerman, but you know, all his tax.
Still a chunk of money, though, isn't it? It's still
enough to retire on for most. Having said that, I'm aware he's bought a Bentley with it, so you know, I have to see. You know, hopefully, I've actually heard some suggestions he's quite shrewd with money, Tyson Fury. I saw a clip of him investing in property to renovate at some point, so who knows? But there you go. let's talk about Burns versus Indongo, looking ahead at next week's action. Eddie Hearn's got a very, very busy schedule at present. You know, we've had Troller Linares, we've obviously got Brook versus Spence, we've got Joshua versus Klitschko, we've had Bellew versus Hay. I think because of that, this one's flown slightly under the radar, but it is a unification fight in the light welterweight division, and unification fights are few and far between. So in that sense, you know, it's a good fight. I must admit, it's never been one that's massively caught my imagination. Tom, what's your take on this matchup looking ahead to next week's action? Tom, you're potentially on mute, mate.
Sorry, my mouse is broken. Yeah, not looking forward to this fight.
Sorry, mate. That's just bad signal.
Okay, come back to me.
I'm back. Let's go over to Paul. Paul, Indongo versus Burns, mate. Is that one you're looking forward to this weekend?
No. Yeah, I mean, you say it's gone under the radar. It's certainly gone under my radar as well. I mean, it's not the most exciting fight, is it? I mean, like Indongo, I really didn't know much about him until that last fight, that quick knockout. I don't think he's really up to much other than that. Ricky Burns just looked old. I thought Kirill Relic beat him. Actually, I thought that was a bit of a gift decision. It's just a bit kind of like I'm not. I mean, I'll watch it, but I'm not thrilled for it by any means. I'm not a huge fan of Ricky Burns, and I think he's kind of like a bit over the hill anyway. So no, in all honesty, not really.
Yeah, I've got to admit I'm in the same boat really, Paul. I haven't seen much of Indongo other than the knockout. Ricky Burns has never been someone I'm a huge fan of. I don't think he's a 140-pound fighter. I never have done. I thought he lost to Kirill Relic, just like you. I'm echoing the same points. So it's not one that I'm really up for, if I'm honest. Yeah, but nevertheless, regardless of that, I guess it is good to see champions fighting champions.
I mean, I think Indongo's got a bit of power in that, and maybe not much else from what I've seen of him. I've seen that fight and one other fight, and in the other fight, he looked pretty awful, to be honest. I can't remember who he was fighting, but he looked pretty awful.
Yeah, his knockout ratio isn't actually crazy. You know, his knockout ratio, I think, is 11 KOs from 25 wins.
21 wins. It's 52%.
Do you fight I've seen him in? I know was an MD, so it did go the distance, and he did look pretty poor. So I don't know. Somebody else might have seen more of him. Maybe Jet's seen more of him and knows that he's good or whatever. But he didn't look great to me.
Are you favouring Burns, Paul?
Yeah, or Indongo by knockout.
Indongo must be probably the worst world champion in the world.
He's got to be, isn't he? Have you seen him other than that knockout, Tom?
I saw the knockout. It was a great shot, but like I'm looking at the 20 fights he had previous to that, they were all in Namibia.
Yeah, but I mean, have you seen any of his other fights?
No, well, I doubt they were on camera. You know, looking down, you know, he was WBO Africa super lightweight title.
Yeah, no,
there is
footage somewhere of one other fight.
Yeah, like I wouldn't say I didn't see it, but you know, that's probably the worst, the lowest class unification the world boxing has seen in quite some time.
Yeah.
Oh God, imagine what Terence Crawford will do to the pair of them.
Well, he's already done Burns in, hasn't he? So
yeah.
Do you ever pick Tom in that fight as to who you fancy out of the two of them? And are you scared of the judging?
Well, the judging is definitely going to be crap. You know, I know Eddie Hearn does listen to the show and all that, but I think he's just doing bad scorecards just to spite us. You know, I think he likes the banter that we have after the fact. No, but I think you have to go for Burns there. Burns fought consistently at a high level, and you know that's lands a Hail Mary punch. It was a hell of a knockout. I gave him my knockout of the year last year, but you know, and the guy isn't even that young. He's quite old, isn't he? I think he's like 32 as well. 34. He's 34. Also, there's not much. Like, you know, if Ricky Burns can't beat this guy, you know, he's not going to be too much. He's probably a top 60 fighter or something in the world, you know.
Yeah.
Fine.
One man who I'm confident will have seen more of Indongo than the rest of the panel is our lower weight classes correspondent, Jet. So probably about time we bring Jet back in. Jet, Indongo, give us your lowdown on him, mate.
Absolute Namibian superstar. I'm joking. I've never seen this guy apart from the Troyanovsky KO, I'll be honest.
Okay.
And I saw Relic, so I'll take credit for that one, but not this one. You know, he's 34, as Irish Tom said. He's basically towards the end of his career, even though he's got a big knockout win. But you know, I favor Burns. Burns, I'm with you, BG, that he's not a 140 fighter. I think, you know, he's a 135 fighter, but he's not an elite sort of fighter by any means. He's just a consistently decent fighter, but he's had a few shoddy decisions over the years. Relic, Beltran, you know, a few others here and there. But yeah, it's not a fight I'm looking forward to. It must be the lowest profile unification fight, you know, in a long time. It's, you know, you say it's flown under the radar. I think, you know, they haven't promoted this because no one really cares about it, I'll be honest. The Hydro might be sold out just to, you know, locality in Scotland and that sort of stuff. But, mate, this bill is pretty bad, let's put it that way. May give Frank's weekend bill a run for its money.
Yeah, it may well do. Let's talk about the undercard, Jet. Scott Cardle versus Barrett, Charlie Edwards versus Butcher, debut of Josh Kelly. Anything there that sort of catches your eye? Do you think that those should be routine victories for Edwards and Cardle?
Yeah, it should be relatively routine. You know, they shouldn't have too much trouble. Probably the standout fight would be the Edwards Butcher fight, but no one really would be interested in it because it's a super flyweight. Sorry, it's a flyweight fight, so you know it's not going to be a mainstay in people's memory. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And as for Josh Kelly, is he someone you've been aware of in the amateurs and, you know, having a look at as he turns into the pros, potentially want to keep an eye on?
Yeah, potentially. He's decent from what I've seen of him. Whether or not he'll be world level or European level or British level, I'm not sure what level he'll be at, but he seems to have some decent skills. I think Joe Cordina's actually on the card as well. I'm not sure if that's confirmed, but okay. He was that's what I was hearing on Twitter. So Joe Cordina's, you know, decent. He's a super featherweight, I think. So, you know, good to keep an eye on them, I guess. You know, hopefully they turn out to be decent and, you know, lead Britain, you know, British boxing into the future, I guess. But we'll wait and see on them.
Definitely. Okay, that makes sense. Paul, Jet, any comments? Sorry, Paul or Tom, any comments whatsoever on any of those undercard fights?
No.
Looks like a dog show.
Yeah, it doesn't look like the best of cards, I must admit. I'm actually in two minds as to whether I'm actually going to spend my Saturday night watching it, and that's coming from a boxing nut. But there you go. Guys, we've actually made fairly good progress through the topics there, having overran massively on last week's action. I guess there wasn't really much to talk about when we got into Burns and Indongo. It appears really that none of us are overly high on Burns and none of us really know Indongo. So it's kind of hard to make too much of an assumption as to what we're actually going to get. I guess none of us would be massively surprised if Indongo wiped Burns out, and by the same token, none of us would be surprised if it's a terrible fight, very scrappy on the scorecards, and Burns wins 120-108, you know. So I guess we'll have to see what Eddie delivers this weekend, hey?
It's not the judges, but Eddie.
I like to give a shout out to not Eddie the Envelope. Now we call him Frank the Fiddler.
There we go.
I got something to say. Jack is trying to claim that he's basically the Terry Flanagan of the podcast.
Hello? Yes. Well, that's what I've been dubbed by Gossips fans.
Yes,
I didn't see that one.
Repeat straight right to the mouth.
I'm taking that. I'm always taking those punches, man.
I think, if we consider, like, very arrogant of me to consider my viewership this way, but if we say we've got like the hardcore PG fan base, and then we've got the sort of more casual boxing fans who maybe tune in one podcast every 10, etc. I would say Jet would be the sort of the Terry Flanagan of the podcast, you know, very technical, you know, really appeals to the purist.
And a bit boring.
I wouldn't say a bit boring, but sometimes sometimes doesn't score a knockout blow. Let's put it that way.
I'm happy to box on the outside and
happy to box on the outside
and struggle.
Irish Tom, definitely a Chisora.
No, I think Irish is Eubank, man. I think Irish is Eubank.
Eubank is all style, no substance. I think Tom has occasional substance, just irregular substance.
Well, I think he has substance at a certain level. You see, Reynolds, Quinlan, you know, those sort of guys. So, you know, those sort of guys.
Fuck that, lads.
Substance misuse.
Fuck that. I'm Prince Patel. No fucking substance. Full of shit.
Irish Tom always does something stupid at the weigh-in, though, which is why I compare him to Chisora. Like, he's always liable to throw out an absolute, like, you know, nightmare comment. Paul?
I know who Paul is. Paul, what do you call your man who fought Tony Bellew when he showed his cock at the weigh-in?
BJ Flores.
BJ.
Yeah, that's our Paul. Got no hair and he likes to flash his cock at weigh-ins.
Wait, so who's Gossip then?
I'm a cross between Lomachenko and AJ. That's me, like.
Oh.
An absolute
Wait, so you have a glass chin, Paul?
An absolute artist with knockout power.
Yeah. Yeah. A short arse with no chin.
I'm
Gossip. Who the fuck is Gossip?
I'm Steve Bunce.
No, you're
David Price. There we go. David Price.
David Price.
No, he's either David Price or Boy Jones Jr.
Boy Jones Jr. Yeah. There we go. I prefer to view myself as a sort of slightly more rugged Joe Calzaghe. I'm
surprised
a miserable streak of Welsh shite.
I'm surprised you didn't say Nathan Cleverly.
Nathan Cleverly, yeah. Similar nose, but without the heart. Yeah.
Good potential. Never followed it through.
Potential. Oh. There you go. There you go. But no, that was a intriguing segment. So what would Stereo Bassi be then? Would he be
Glowacki's?
Yes, Glowacki would be an obvious
cornerman.
Glowacki's right ball.
Oh,
yeah. Or who's?
No, he'd also make a case for, and also he'd make a case for being Prince Patel because he just fucking did a disappearing act.
Disappearing act. Yeah, I was trying to find someone who was ridiculously inactive. Maybe Tyson Fury. Like,
James Kirkland.
James Kirkland, yeah. Puts on a lot of weight between fights.
Yeah, a bit chinny. Didn't Sherry have an amateur fight and he got stopped? So then he put James Kirkland.
I think he had a white collar fight and trainer threw in the towel. Yeah.
Poor. No, it's more than I ever did.
Yeah. I think he quit. Shout out to Jerry if you're watching, mate.
Jerry, you're a quitter. That's what he's saying.
Friend of yours, definitely. Let me go around the panel and get any final thoughts before we wrap it up for the week. Let's start with Terry. Jet. Let's start with Jet.
I'm a world champion now, guys. I made it. No, I'm joking. Nah, nothing, mate.
Nothing from yourself. BJ Flores, anything from you, mate?
No, I'm good, mate. I'm good.
Chisora?
No, I'm Prince Patel. Prince Patel equals ratings.
Oh, God.
This is true. But anything else from yourself before we call it a week?
Watch him put the podcast up now with the title Terry Flanagan, Prince Patel, all on the podcast.
So I put Terry Flanagan, Prince Patel, Derek Chisora, and Steve Bunce discuss Lomachenko versus Garcia, Terry Flanagan, Liam Smith, and Burns and Indongo.
You might get 10 views.
Yeah.
It may be slightly disingenuous, but there you go. But yeah, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks very much to the panel for, as ever, giving up their Wednesday evenings, to Jet, Paul, Tom. Good stuff. Particularly enjoyed the discussion about last week's boxing. Thought we had some good chat there about Flanagan and Lomachenko. I thought it was relatively constructive tonight, which is unlike us, but there you go. Shout out to everyone who joined us live. Been up to about 125 people at one point, so thanks to everyone. 56 people hitting the thumbs up button, so if you haven't done that already, please do that now, or if you're watching after this has gone up, please take the time to click that. But yeah, many thanks for tuning in, guys. Hope you've all enjoyed the show. If you're new or you haven't done so before, please subscribe to my channel. You can also check out Jet's channel, which is Boxing Discussions. And yeah, massive thanks for everyone for tuning in. And we'll catch you soon.
All right, losers.
Au revoir.
Cheers all. Thank you.